little flame, now get out the way. Whole lot of change, still been the same, put that on the name. I had to go through it just to get to it, look what I became. Elevate, level up, way to the top.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Star Motivates You. I'm Glenda Baker, along with my hosts, Joshua Jones and Star Singletary.
Hey.
We'd like to take this time to thank our sponsor, Best Buy, for proudly sponsoring us. Tonight, we have on the show Rafe Carlson, upcoming rising superstar in the country music field. Thanks for coming on the show tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it. Been looking forward to it for a while.
And we're looking forward to it.
All right, Rafe. My first question is tell us a little about yourself.
Sure. Yeah, I'm from just a little bit north of Duluth, Minnesota. If you've ever been up to Minnesota, it's pretty close to God's country. I mean, the northeast part of the state. So the little, I grew up hunting and fishing and working out in the woods. So, very few people, lots of wilderness, lots of trees and just wildlife. And that was kind of my life, up until the point where I went to Nashville. And so, I grew up, went to high school just outside of Duluth in a small town called Hermantown.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I graduated, I got in a couple of sales jobs here and there. And eventually I knew I wanted to do music. I didn't know how to do music, and I knew I wanted to do it. And so I put in my 2 weeks notice one day to a place I've been working for 3 years. It was a really good job. I got it pretty close to right out of high school. And I was only about 22 years old. And my boss said, "You're really going to try to go do music for a living?" He's like, "You've never played a show. You've never sang in front of people. You've never done any of this stuff." And it was a tough job to get. And it was a good job. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to try it." And, gave my 2 weeks notice and left my job. I flew to Nashville about a week later. And then I started booking shows, and I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't even know you could make money doing it, but I just figured I'd learn how. And so started going to Nashville and spending my winters down there and my summers up in the Midwest. And one thing led to another. I recorded some music with some real big dogs down there in Tennessee and started just performing at festivals and fairs, and it grew and grew and grew to the point now where we're touring, 5 months out of the year, playing festivals and fairs and stuff and doing the thing. So it's definitely there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, and a lot of people are trying to do that social media, Spotify streams, TikTok dances sort of thing. And we've kind of came at it from a way that's maybe a little more old school, but we're just touring, we're hitting the road, and we're trying to just make good music,
That's good. How did you get started in music? Like, what motivated you to get started in the music?
Well, I grew up listening to my mom. My mom was in bands her whole life up until probably around the time she met my dad. He kind of put the stop for that. But she was in country bands and rock bands and everything back in the day in the 70s and the 80s. And my cousins were in rock bands when I was growing up. My older cousins both play guitar, and they're insane musicians. They're phenomenal guitar players. And I grew up watching them when I was 9, 10, 11 years old on the stage playing in rock bands. And that's what made me pick up a guitar when I was about 13. And taught myself how to play guitar over the span of a few years. I was still afraid to sing in front of people. That's something that you never, you can't get over that until you just start doing it. And but yeah, we really came from a family. I came from a family of music, and I would say there's more musical people in my family than non-musical people. It's a lot of musicians.
Tell us what artist had the most influence on you in your career?
The most influence on me is without a doubt Chris Stapleton. And there's a handful of others like Chris Cornell and Bob Seger and, Leonard Skinner, all of Leonard Skinner, and, Audio Slave, Blackstone Cherry, even Stevie Nicks and Fleetwood Mac. But Chris Stapleton, I remember when I was probably 16 years old. I don't know if any of y'all listen to Chris Stapleton at all, but he put out an album back in in 2015, I believe, called Traveler. And I don't know how many awards it's won. It's one of the greatest country albums of all time, as far as I'm concerned. But I was on the lake at my uncle's cabin up on Island Lake, just north of Duluth. I was playing frisbee with a couple of my cousins, and I remember the radio was on, and my aunt, you know, she at the time she was always on the cutting edge of everything country, and at that time I was listening to Slipknot and Korn. Oh man, I was listening to Metallica and Lamb of God and Meshuggah and everything, and I was not listening to country at all. I grew up listening to country, but then I got my teenage angst phase, you know,
Right.
got that out of me. But I remember a song came on the radio, and it was Parachute by Chris Stapleton. And I was listening, you know, country radio at that time was Florida Georgia Line. And, you know, all the stuff that, you know, kind of the bro country stuff was really big then. And that's fine. And that stuff's not bad, but, you know, there's a time and place for that sort of thing. I was never into it back then. But I remember Parachute came on, and I was playing frisbee, and I stopped what I was doing. I was like, I couldn't even believe it. I've never heard someone sing like that. And I sang, nobody ever heard me sing at that point, but I sang in my bedroom by myself and, you know, just played stuff and sang along in the car. That was probably right around the time I got my driver's license. But I said, Aunt Michelle, who is this guy singing? She's like, you don't know who this is? This is Chris Stapleton. And that probably changed my life for real. I mean, I thought if somebody can make this kind of music and have their songs on the radio, then I can do it too. And I went and saw him in 2017. He came to Duluth at Amsoil Arena. And that was probably the most impactful concert I ever went to. I saw him. I mean, I've seen all kinds of hard rock and heavy metal bands, like just the most mind-blowing performances you could imagine, like pyrotechnics and explosions and fire and just cool stuff. When I was growing up, I tried to go to every metal show. And Chris Stapleton up there, just with a guitar, and his wife, you know, and his little stand-up bass and his little band he's got, that was probably one of, if not the best concerts I've ever seen. And that probably changed as far as influences go, he's hands down the biggest influence for me.
Okay.
You're currently on tour right now, right?
Yes, sir.
What's your next city?
Next city's this Friday. We're going to be in Mason, Wisconsin at Concert in the Corn. It's a festival. We're going to be with Dustin Lynch, Justin Moore, Joe Nichols, I think Jody Messina, Daryl Worley, Eddie Montgomery, Sarah Evans, and a handful more. It's a bunch of country artists. Big concert in a big cornfield. It's a lot of fun. A lot of rowdy Wisconsinites. It's a good time.
Okay. And who are some of the musicians that you had the privilege to work with?
Oh man. So many. The first song I ever co-wrote in Nashville, I wrote with Tim Rushlow, who is the lead singer of Little Texas. So he's the voice of God Bless Texas and Kick a Little, Amy's Back in Austin, what might have been like all these biggest, you know, 90s country band hits. And this is my first week in Nashville. I just wound up in his living room through a friend of a friend, my good buddy Jeff, my producer, and we wrote a song, and it was just total culture shock because I'd never written. Now I co-write all the time. When I'm down there, I write every day, and when I'm on tour, I try to write at least once a week on Zoom. But man, Tim Rushlow, and I've collaborated with all kinds of great players, maybe people who you might not know, but some of the most iconic studio cats in Nashville. I mean, Wes Little, Evan Hutchins, you know, some of the best players. I'm trying to think, but yeah, the best of the best when it comes to players like guitar, drums, bass. Rob McNeely, you know, John Conley. But as far as artists, you know, I've written music with a lot of the big country artists and a lot of the big country songwriters. And that's been a cool thing because you kind of, you sit down with these people that live in Nashville and they eat, sleep, and breathe Nashville. The whole world, their world is Nashville. And then they get out on the road and they tour for a couple weeks and they go back. So my whole thing is I go to Nashville when I need to, and I love Nashville. It's got a place in my heart, but I like being on the road. I like being up north. We primarily tour in the Midwest, and we've got fans up here. So when we're on the road, we're playing festivals, people wearing our shirts in the front row, singing along to our songs. And so I go to Nashville to write and record. I don't live there. I'll spend a few months there a year, but I don't live there full time.
Right.
And so when I go to Nashville, I'm writing with these people that are, big shot artists, big shot songwriters. I think a lot of times I'm able to provide kind of a, because Nashville can be a little bit of an echo chamber in the sense that everybody's there, they're all writing, they're all making music, but everybody's doing and saying and thinking the same things because it's just a kind of little world. And so when I come in, just fresh and different experiences, I've had a lot of success in songwriting and just in partnerships and collaborations with people just because my experience and where I'm coming from is so different, being from Minnesota, and just the life I've lived is different than, the people that kind of get into that Nashville thing. And I'm not bashing that. I love Nashville. It's just at this point in my career, it's not for me to live there full time. But I think that's the cool thing about songwriting is everybody can come together with totally different experiences and make something that's totally its own thing.
So you said you enjoy collaborating. Do you also like to write your own songs as well?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, songwriting and co-writing are two completely different things. And you sit down to write a song with other people, just kind of the name of the game in Nashville. I mean, there's very few situations where a song is going to be on the radio or hit number one that just one person wrote. I mean, that's almost unheard of unless it's like a Chris Stapleton deal or something like that. But it's mostly people sitting down in an office, and it's very, very systematic. It's very controlled, and that's fine. I mean, there's an art to that. There's an art to doing the co-writing thing, and I know people I have friends that are maybe not the best songwriters, but they're excellent co-writers, and they're good at working with other people and getting the good stuff out of the other songwriters in the room. And that's a skill in and of itself. And I love co-writing. I also love just writing by myself. And when I'm on the road, I am really bad at making time for that, and I wish I did more, and I need to. Just because we're kind of we're on the road, we're playing festivals, we're in the bus or in the rig with the band, and it's just a 24/7 party all the time. So it's hard to make time to sit down and write a song when I'm not necessarily in a creative mode. When I'm going out, we're playing for thousands of people, and then we're going back, and then we're hitting the bars, and we're going out and having fun and meeting up with people. And it's just like, I'm in a live in the moment mode. I'm not really in like an introspective sit down and write a song mode. Right. When I go to Nashville, that kind of comes out, and I really do like co-writing. It's just it's a different thing than writing a song on your own. And all the songs I have out on Spotify and Apple Music right now actually were songs I wrote a long time ago. There's kind of that lag effect of releasing music where you write the song and then you take it to the studio and then you get it mixed and mastered and fully produced, and you get it to the distributor, and then you maybe do a photo shoot and a video shoot, and you get all your assets ready to put it out. And then it finally comes out. Well, that could be a couple months, that could be several years between writing a song and it actually coming out. And so I've got stuff out right now on Apple Music and Spotify that I wrote 3-4 years ago. So most of the stuff I have out, I just wrote on my own. There's one, the song Just Can't Explain is the one I wrote with Tim Rushlow from Little Texas. That's the only song I have out that I co-wrote. Everything else I wrote on my own. So I've got dozens, if not hundreds of songs that I've co-written with some of the best writers in Nashville, just kind of waiting to get recorded and waiting to get put out, or waiting to get recorded by somebody else.
So what do you enjoy doing when you are not performing? Like, besides like going to bars or whatnot. What else do you
That's a good question.
Uh,
Um, man, I used to disc golf all the time. You guys ever disc golf?
No.
no.
What
What's
is
that?
that?
It's like golf with a frisbee.
Oh, I know what you're
Oh,
talking
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So you count your strokes basically.
Oh,
And you throw it into a little basket, and that's really fun. I did that when I had more time, where I would, I was on the road solo for a long time without a band, and I would go out and I'd get to a city, and I have a couple hours to kill, and so I'd go find a park that had disc golf in it, and I'd disc golf for a while, and then I'd go on. This is some weird stuff, but for a long time I didn't even like shower. I would just shower in rivers and lakes and stuff, and I basically just sit down in my vehicle, and I would just play. Like I would literally hit the road. I go disc golf, maybe hit a bar, maybe meet up with some friends, then take my backpack with my soap and my toothbrush and everything, jump in a lake, jump